out, and away we go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Formula One True North. We're back here with the boys. Thomas, Drew, Ed is out of commission today, but we'll have him back soon. So, gentlemen, today we are recapping Singapore. We're recapping it ahead of a drought of, 3-4 weeks before we have another race. So let's make the most of this one.
Yeah, I think we're back into like October 20s or something like that before we hit Coda.
It's about a month, actually, because today we're recording on the 24th. And I feel like I wanted to hit this break with a better race. But I found this race kind of boring. Drew, am I only one?
I actually quite liked it. I don't know if there was some... Thomas and I had a quick little back and forth 1-2 before we hit on the podcast. But, I actually quite liked it. I think, back to, what we discussed last episode, you have the race under the lights, which is nice. You know that this is a hugely physical track for the boys because they're going to be losing a ton of weight. It's super sticky hot in Singapore. I like the track layout because I know the drivers have to really pay attention. And for the same reason I hate driving it on F1 2024 on my Xbox is the same reason why I enjoy watching, because I know how difficult it is. And
oh, do you?
You know exactly I'm well aware. Yeah, I'm well aware exactly how difficult it is sitting in my air-conditioned home with my little fucking controller. Yeah. But I think ultimately, like, the guys did a really good job. The fact that there was no safety car or even a yellow flag was absolutely phenomenal. Everybody was kissing the side barriers, both the Tech Pro and the concrete. I thought everyone did a really good job at keeping out of the wall, which was fantastic. And you know what? I think, there's a portion of this that wanted to enjoy this for multiple reasons. The first one was a Lando Norris win. This is going to make coming into the Drivers' Championship a little bit closer. I think number two is the top four teams are really fighting for every point right now, which is always good to see. I thought there was, for a track with no overtaking, I thought there was a decent amount of overtaking. And, lastly, I think there was a bit of nostalgia coming in for Danny Rick being his last race. And, I want to get into that a little bit more, but I think kind of Red Bull has kind of left them high and dry on that one. And I think there was a little bit of emotional nostalgia there for me too, because I've always liked Danny Rick, at least since I've started watching racing, right? So, it was a good race, man. I liked it.
I thought the race was all right. Kind of disappointed that there was no reds or yellows. But I think we can thank Logan Sargent for that because he's out. Colin Pinto's actually scoring points again, which is freaking amazing. Logan Sargent was the problem.
Just straight up.
It's official now. We heard it here on F1 True North. Yeah, Logan Sargent was the problem.
Yeah, I'm happy Lando won, and it's nice to see another McLaren win. I just hope it doesn't turn out to be the same as, when McLaren starts winning, and next year we're going to be like, man, we want someone else to win instead of McLaren. But I really hope that's not going to be the case. I thought it was all right race. Could have been a little bit more interesting, but it wasn't really boring or anything either. So I did want a more fun, more entertaining race, especially what you guys said, just before the break, something to kind of get hooked and can't wait to get to the next race, but that unfortunately didn't happen.
Basically, you wanted blood, is what you're saying.
Not literal
carnage.
Blood. Yes.
You wanted something to go down. And I'm going to qualify my statement. When I said it was boring, I think it kind of went to plan as you thought it would, right? Right off the starting line, not a lot of passing into the first corner, right? We kind of maintained that running order, and then it was just Lando running away with it, right? He had one of those weekends where he seemed like he was in control, where he was, dominating the pace, setting the race pace, and I think I was hoping we'd maybe see a little bit more competitiveness early on, at least. I think, Lewis with the soft tires going into that first corner tried his best against Max, but just didn't have the runway to kind of pick it up. And after that, it was just, to me, it was just a management race, right? And I understand, it's hot and the conditions are crazy. I mean, what was the humidity, like 80% or something like that?
Yeah, it was over 77%. Yeah,
that's insane, right? And then you're sitting in a car, so I understand it's also a race of attrition, right? For these guys trying to like just keep it together in these sweltering, humid temperatures. Like I said, I would have liked to see a little bit more action up front and hopefully see someone compete for that number one spot. But, I felt the exact same way when Max was leading, with a 21 or 28 second lead after, 20 laps. Like he was just, Lando was just in a league of his own in this one. And he was managed to keep it despite, a couple of close calls with the wall in the closing laps. He almost pulled a George Russell because, to every you guys' points, it's a track that requires, the utmost concentration because it's easy to make a mistake, especially in those conditions, to lose focus. So that's kind of my quick takeaway. I think the subplots around this race were really interesting. Obviously, we had not Alpine. We had Williams compete again. They had a really strong showing. Colapinto was really strong. And we've had the whole Danny Rick thing, which I think deserves a little bit more of a dedicated topic of conversation. So we will move on to that. Beyond Lando winning, we had Max keeping it close, staying in second, minimizing the point loss. What do we think about his performance and Red Bull overall for this weekend?
I think it was trash. I think the fact that Lando beat Max by 20 seconds and Lando was peeling it back in the last little laps, especially because he was going through some traffic. I think arguably he would have been closer to the 25-second mark. And that's way off the pace. I just don't think Max and Red Bull have it hooked up anymore. And, to Checo's point a few races ago, Max is finally feeling what Checo's been feeling all year. And I don't know if Max just has a skill set that was allowing him to drive through the car's problems, or if Max was getting some sort of, specialty treatment or different spec of the car in order to maintain their competitiveness. But ultimately, I think that Red Bull has really dropped the ball because, just by looking at it, if anyone else was in that car, I don't even think it'd be in second place. I just think because Max is such a skilled driver, he's able to maintain that second place. And if you look at Checo, what did he make up? A few spots. You know what I mean?
13 to 10 or something like that.
Yeah. What are we doing here? You're arguably in the second, statistically speaking, the second fastest car on the grid. And I don't think that's it anymore. And when you have teams like Haas, out qualifying you, it's not a look. It's not a look. And Colapinto and Albon out qualifying these guys, those guys were quick. And I just don't think that, in terms of the constructors, I think that's a long shot for Red Bull to fight back for that constructors. I think Max just put himself in a great position early on in the season that allowed him to maintain this. And I think, like we talked about last episode, that if you cut up all the wins between Oscar and Lando and Lewis and Charles and George, that you're going to end up in a position where the wins just get spread out too much. And especially with Danny Ricciardo's cheeky little move at the end there, stealing that fastest lap, Red Bull's pulling out every card in the books they can to make sure that Max wins that drivers' championship. And I think it's his to lose, but I just don't think with the remaining races left, unless there's something catastrophic at the Red Bull camp, that I just don't think it's going to happen, right?
So honestly, I'm not too surprised. What's up, which is Red Bull, must come down eventually, and I think they finally reached that point where they're coming down, and McLaren is actually catching up and caught up, and that's why they're going up and up. And I think we're going to continue seeing that. Another thing I think is Red Bull, from what I'm seeing, and maybe Max and Checo are kind of emotionally almost checked out a little bit. To your point, Drew, Max was doing what he can, and even then, he was behind over 20 seconds behind Lando. Not even gonna touch upon Checo because that's a whole nother story, but they're just checked out. There's so much problems in the team, and last couple episodes what we're talking about, everything's scratching under pressure and they're not performing. In regards to drivers, I definitely don't see Red Bull taking that. Constructors, McLaren has that in the bag, I think, from the performance we keep on seeing from them. Constructors easily in the bag. Drivers, I don't think. I think Max is still gonna get it. But yeah, it's not surprising what happened this weekend.
So I think the interesting thing about this is, I mean, personally, I don't think Red Bull has a chance at constructors. I think that's sailed. I think McLaren, barring any kind of major meltdown, has kind of got the constructors in hand right now. I don't know if Red Bull is going to maintain second place at this pace. Ferrari is about 30 points behind, 34 points behind. That's one race. That's one race of the Ferrari boys maintaining that competitiveness. I'm going to ask you a question which I don't know you can answer, which I know is really great for a podcast. But when we look at the fall, we look at the rise and fall of McLaren and Mercedes, not Mercedes, and Red Bull, is it a function of McLaren really advancing that far, that fast, or is something systematically gone wrong at Red Bull? And, how do you lose that much of a pace differential that quickly mid-season? Drew, can you answer that question for me?
I can't answer it with 100% certainty, but from my perspective, I think there's a few things in play. One is the law of diminishing returns. So once you get to a certain point, you can't keep progressing at the same pace. Eventually that has to plateau. And I think that's where Red Bull hit. It was just the fastest car they could design under these regulations, and they kind of hit it. But what happened is they hit it earlier than everybody else, like 2 seasons earlier than everybody else. But what that does is it just gives people 2 seasons to catch up. Now, there's a lot of great things going on at the McLaren factory, and those guys have a new wind tunnel. They have Zach Brown doing a lot of good things, hiring the right people. They now have 2 good drivers that are more comfortable in that car. I think there's a combination of factors that's helped McLaren get to where they needed to be, because Red Bull's just kind of peaked out. And that's just the reality of designing a car. And at one point, there's only so many things you can do unless the regulations change. And, I think there's a combination of, things going on at Red Bull as well. Some turbulence in the higher ups, like when, Horner was getting, accused of some handsy stuff, and then Adrian Newey leaving, and then news of somebody else leaving. I'm sure there's a moral and personal dilemma that a lot of these people have, and some morale has been lost in the paddock as well, and all that factors in, right? And if everyone's not at the top of their game, then obviously you're going to have some problems, and I think that that's what's happening, and I think that there's some overall confidence loss going on over at Red Bull, which is contagious. And on the other side of the paddock in the McLaren garage, those guys are factoring in that same contagiousness, but they're running with it in the opposite direction. And I think that, every dynasty has to fall at some point, right? The Mercedes dynasty had to fall. The McLaren dynasty had to fall. The Williams dynasty, they all had to fall. And that's fine. And we just found out where Red Bull's was. And it was a little bit shorter lived than the Mercedes one. That's that.
I don't have anything to add. Drew hit the nail on the head with that one.
All right. Drew, look at you. Great answer, buddy. Great answer.
Is it the right answer? Did I win? I didn't know there was going to be a test today.
Well, you know what? Good enough for me. I think it's... I think the part that I'm struggling with when trying to rationalize what's happened is just how quickly, and I should say how quickly, because McLaren has been showing good pace from, mid last year. They were making big strides and into this year, right? So they've been working at it for a while. I think I'm just more surprised about how quickly Red Bull fell off, right? And to me, how is the car seemingly so much weaker than it was in previous seasons, right? And is that an engineering thing? Is it an Adrian Newey thing? Is it, I don't know what it is, right? Is it just drivers and, and like team, like just not in the flow? Like is it one of those, other intangibles that you can't really put it on, or is it just like a small, combination, the parts that make up this sum, or just, the result and the impact is bigger than you'd expect. But to me, I guess that's what I'm just trying to figure out is, given the rate of decline in their speed and their competitiveness, where that comes from, even compared to cars, some weeks like Ferrari, who didn't have a great showing this week, or not as strong as they would have liked. But, relative to the rest of the field, we're still okay. Looking further back in the field, anybody that surprised you this weekend?
Yeah. Nico Hulkenberg was looking pretty tight. That guy did a great job in qualies, and at the end of the first lap, I think he was in 5th place. Like, that was fantastic. And I think, Oscar was able to dispatch him real quick, but obviously when you're in the fastest car on the grid versus, the lowest funded car on the grid, that stuff's going to happen. But I think the guys at Haas did an absolutely great job before K-Mag had to retire the car. I think he was on lap 40 or something like that. And we had Alex Albon with a quick puncture, and he retired the car at lap 20 or something like that. And I thought Colapinto's, man, he's been fantastic. I think the rest of the drivers were meh at best. The Sauber boys are still struggling at the back of the grid, and I think we have an official signing of Bottas for another season extended. Question mark?
Do we?
I think I think Bottas got a +1 for Sauber. And that's not going to go into the Audi game, but they're going to at least have him as a driver for Sauber next year.
This inside information, or have I just been not paying
attention
this
first,
week?
Folks.
Thomas, did that bring a smile to your face?
It did. Smile and disappointment at the same time. Just because from what we all know, the Kick Sauber team is just 0 points this year, and I don't know what it is. Bottas is a pretty solid driver, and they can't score points, they can't perform, they can't even get close to the podium. It's concerning to see what is wrong there. For my top drivers, or what I think Colapinto was really has my eye on it, just the way he's performing new in F1, and he's killing it, scoring points. So he has kudos from me. It's actually fun and enjoyable watching him race, and because he's actually putting in the effort, gaining track position, gaining points, moving up on the ladder. And in regards to the Bottas situation, that he signed another year, if that's true, I don't know how I feel. Like, I'm still glad that he's in F1, but I'm kind of sad that he's stuck with that team, and I hope when it becomes Audi, he actually gets a chance to go there and actually see what he can do there, and hopefully bring out his true potential again.
Yeah, I'm looking at the standings right now. So Bottas, Zhou, and Sargent are all tied for points with 0.
Yeah.
0. They're the 21st and 22nd drivers on the list out of a field of 20. So not a good look for Sauber. They've just, what's the point? Like, why even show up at this time? Like, they're consistently 19th, 20th in qualifying. Like, it's...
Do you remember at the beginning of the season, they couldn't even get the tires off? Like, they were pulling 50-second pit stops. Like, almost a full lap it took them to get a tire off and on.
I guess progress is, relative, right?
That's the thing, right? So, based on that, now that they're doing sub 4-second pit stops, they're doing amazing.
But how do you even employ a team? Like, how do you put together a Formula One team at this level where pit stops take that long and you have this kind of performance? Like, there isn't even an inkling of, like, at least when you see like Williams, or you see Haas, or I know Haas is having a pretty good year, or these other kind of lower team tiers. Even Alpine has kind of found a way to kind of like pull up their socks from in different races this year. But it's just Sauber has had 0 glimmers of hope. Nothing.
Sauber became basically like the old Haas, and to be fair, for the pit stops, that the problems they had, it was, from what I heard and what I read, it was like manufacturing defect with the wheel nut or something not coming out. Yeah. So to be fair, kind of like a little bit of leeway there, but again, that's not an excuse for a multi-million-dollar team. This shit should not be happening.
No.
They went to
there's no
get their shit from like AutoSource or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Parts Boys or some shit like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking of end of the road, let's talk about Danny, because
can we take a moment right now? Like, I know we were talking about it last episode, and I think there's an opportunity. Can we have like a Danny Rick tribute episode?
We got 4 weeks coming up of
That's what I'm getting at. Like, I think that there's an opportunity for us to do a Danny Rick tribute episode, and each one of us needs to talk about like one memorable Danny Rick moment. So like however that looks, just do like a Danny Rick, love off or hate. Maybe you just like you hated him for whatever reason, but I think we need to remember Danny Rick, and I think he's a personality that. And we're talking like he's fucking dead.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. We'll do his eulogy.
The whole Danny Rick, is it confirmed like that was his last race or no?
No, that's the weirdest part.
That's the bullshit part, and that's where he's a guy. He's been a personality, regardless of his career choices.
13 years, bud.
Yeah, I know. But regardless of his career choices, he's made some questionable decisions sometimes, looking back at it. Hindsight's 2020. That being said, he's been a figure in the paddock and in the media and in the sport that's been loved, and that has really helped elevate the profile of Formula One to non-fans because of his personality and his likability factor. And I think for Red Bull or Visa, Cash App, whoever, the management teams to not provide some finality to the decision. I think he was talking in all those interviews like, okay, I'm done. He seems resigned to the fact that this is it, but there's been no confirmation. And I think he deserved a proper send-off to the fans. I think he deserved a proper send-off on his last race. And I think the fact that they have not yet made any announcements now, let alone prior to that weekend, it's fucking bullshit, honestly.
But maybe it's not his last race. That's another possibility.
It's true. It's also not his last race. But when he was talking in the interviews and all the other drivers in the after, like everybody was giving him the final 21 gunshot salute. You know what I mean? And like,
yeah,
I think they all know something that they're just not publicly letting out, which sucks. And to Walker's point, like now this guy's doing interviews all over Formula One, all over news, sports news, all around the world, is watching him essentially saying goodbye without having the ability to say that, like Walker said again, like the finality of it. Right. And the last person that I saw retire gracefully was Sebastian Vettel. And like, that was a beautiful send-off that they let him do, and they were doing the donuts, and like everybody remembered a great. Now, is he a great? I don't know about going that far, but again, to Walker's point, like the personality that he's brought to Formula One has changed the way people have perceived Formula One drivers. And I think everybody in the paddock and anyone that started watching Formula One through Drive to Survive and COVID and all that stuff really got to know and love him as a person and him in the paddock. And I hope he goes on to do great things, and I think he will. But, in order to give him just the dignity of having a final answer and being able to say, yeah, guys, this is my last race. I just wanted to spend a little more time in the car. I just wanted, because I watched a couple of interviews of Kim Illman, the photographer from Australia, and I know that they're pretty close because they're both Aussie boys. And Kim kind of said without a shadow of a doubt that was going to be his last race. And it's unfortunate that that's the way it kind of happened. And I hope Helmut Marko and Christian Horner have a final answer, at least by the in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, Coda is going to have Liam Lawson in the car, but yeah, I think he didn't get the goodbye he deserved. Straight up,
yeah, deserved a better send off. And you know what? To Thomas's point, if he's not done and he comes back and he's racing in Coda, like that's awkward too,
right? Like it's a zero-win situation.
Zero-win situation. And he needed that send-off. Now, do I think that Liam Lawson deserves a shot in that car? Absolutely. Do I think it's a bad decision to kind of sunset Danny at this point, like ahead of the break? Not necessarily. I just think it's a really shitty way of going out. And he deserved...
Execution was poor.
And, from what I don't know what you guys have read. From what I've read, it really comes down to another kind of power struggle between Helmut and Christian, right? Marco wants him out of there. Christian seems to be a little bit more lenient, or let him finish the season, whatever it might be. So I'm not really sure what's going on there, but it just kind of speaks to that incongruent kind of leadership that the Red Bull family has right now, and it's obviously trickling down into moments like this, and it's a real shame. Who do we think we're going to see in that other Visa Cash App seat come Coda? It's a month away from now.
Lawson, non-negotiable.
Liam?
Yeah. I think he's the closest thing to a sure shot that they have. Anything else would just be a shot in the dark, and I don't think Visa Cash App at this point is willing to take that shot in the dark. They're not in a position to. They have at least something pretty consistent with Yuki. He might not be the greatest, but they know where they sit with him. And from what Liam Lawson showed in the few races that he did have while Danny Rick's hand was broken, I think that they're going to be pretty happy with what they have. And considering that's like the little brother team of Red Bull, I think it's the best call that they could make. And, while they have another young gun cooking in F2, I think that that Yuki and Lawson are probably your best drivers right there right now, especially if Checo keeps shit in the bed like he does. Because the fact that Checo's getting that seat and Danny Rick is not, and I'm not saying Danny Rick deserves that Red Bull seat because he does not as well, but I would say that Danny Rick was more consistent in that V-carb than Checo is in that Red Bull. So if you're dumping one, dump them both.
I agree. In regards to, I would go the same, I think, for V-carb. I'm going to say Liam Lawson has the best opportunity, best chance to actually be there. Hopefully, one thing that I wanted to add, hopefully he doesn't turn out to be Nick DeVries, had one or two strong races and then just plateaus. That would be very, very unfortunate if that would be the case, and that's another Red Bull saga that continues with all their bullshit, internal and external. So, hopefully the kid performs and does well and continues, scoring points or close to scoring points, and that's it.
Maybe Mick Schumacher's going to sweep in and get Checo's seat.
That would be something, but I don't see that happening.
No, I think he's too close to the Mercedes family for Toto to let him under his wing like that. No, he's going to hold on to him.
Absolutely not going to happen. I just keep feeling for Mick because the guy's getting no love from anyone.
No,
not even Sauber. And you know what the problem is? There are a lot of strong young drivers coming up. I was thinking about this when we were talking about Bottas, and kind of filling that next Sauber seat. Like there's a strong field out there right now of drivers coming up, and these older guys that are kind of like existing kind of middle of the pack, like they've got to watch out because there's a lot of talent coming up ready for the big show.
I think you nailed that. I think like if Colapinto is an exemplification of what those other guys have, like Hadjar, like he's just another guy. You got Ollie Behrman who's getting a seat. You got Kimi Antonelli that's getting a seat. Like those are just, and like if you look at the F2 standings, Kimi and Behrman are not in a good spot. Like those are like the meh drivers of Formula 2. Colapinto was doing quite well, but like Isaac Hadjar and stuff, like those guys are murdering down that F2 grid. If those guys got a chance in Formula 1, I think they could do great.
Yeah, I mean, I guess part of it will be as a result of the team and the car that they have. I know there's more homologation there, but yeah, I agree with you. Like there's lots of talent down there in F2 right now, and there are a very finite number of spots. So when you're looking at like Valtteri and who?
Mick. Because
Mick obviously, but even going up into, I mean, what's his name, Lance? Like Stroll is kind of guaranteed a spot, but it'll be interesting to see, as that pressure swells from underneath, like who starts to fall off from the current drivers.
Could you imagine that? Could you imagine knowing that you are in the most difficult sport to reach the pinnacle at because there's only 20 of you, and having the safety net of knowing that you will never get fired as long as you feel like driving for your dad's team? Like what an absolute blessing that would be. Like it's one thing to not get fired from your dad's company because you're like a whatever mid-level manager and dad could tuck you away and just give you some stupid ass, but to be a Formula 1 driver and have the safety like that, I don't know. I think that's fucking epic and nepotism at its finest.
Yeah, I don't know. Where do you think Lance would go after he retires? Would he be like chief culture officer or some like made up shit like that?
Nope, he would
technical
be
director.
Ooh, no. I have it.
What is it?
Spoiled rich kid on a beach.
Yeah, I could see that.
Throb.
Wow, I can't believe you made an acronym that quickly on that. That's unreal. That was unreal. Yes, I think he would do absolutely nothing. I think, chief culture officer or something like that, or I don't know, head basket weaver or something like that.
HB Dub.
Chief pottery maker.
There we go.
For Aston Martin.
Perfect. Do we want to touch on Max and getting his hand slapped for swearing, for using profanity?
I think it needs to be talked about.
I think there's a lot more there than just like swearing, because if you look at like, you know, the reasoning that Bin Suleiman was given for the reprimand, it's gets more and more ridiculous. But Drew, I'll let you start us off.
Yeah, these drivers, I guess the new age of Formula One drivers is they have to be woke and stay in some sort of like lane in terms of PR and not pissing anyone off. But like, if you remember the drivers of old, like these guys were hacking bogeys, slapping ass, swearing, fighting in the paddock, like legitimate fisting. Like, maybe that's a bad turn of phrase.
I was going to say fist fighting.
Legitimate fighting. Yes, not fist. Well, fisting's not a swear word if you actually believe it or not. Yeah, they were legitimately fighting in the paddock. And I just think that, you know, we hold these new guys to a higher standard, just like we hold everyone else and everything to a higher standard now. And, you know, just because it happened in the old days doesn't mean it's okay now. Yeah, I get it. But ultimately, like, these guys are passionate. They're the best of the best. They want to win. Like, second is not an option for all 20 of these dudes on the grid. And, you know, especially with Max having such a winner's mentality and for winning so long, I don't even blame the guy for being passionate. I think other guys have done and said just as much stuff, but I think to your point, Walker, like, you know, the reality is there's something more to this than that him swearing in an interview. I don't think that's it. I don't know what it is, but
so basically, from what the FIA director, you know, to what I understand, he basically wants to be like, you know, what Drew said, all like woke and inclusive, and essentially make it like a family-friendly sport. No swearing, everything has to go to the T. Whatever the case is, I think I would agree with Max. I mean, they're all adults. Everyone's adults. If someone swears during an incident or an accident or whatever reason, I think they have the full right to do so. You know, obviously within limit if they're not being racist or offensive like that. But if it's just like a regular swear, if they crashed or something happened, yeah, I think they should have the right to do that. And for them being like hand slapped essentially for that, or Max being hand slapped, that's weak. I don't think that's okay. It kind of takes away from the sport. So I'm 100% with Max on this one. Like, this is getting a little bit too ridiculous.
I think there are some really interesting kind of like nuanced elements to this. So I think, you know, first and foremost, the FIA director, Bin Suleiman, I think it was really interesting hearing his comparison, you know, when he was talking about the standard that he wanted to hold, you know, F1 to, and that he doesn't want them to be like these rappers who are always swearing, right? And he said, oh, these rappers just swear. So like they're that's a whole other discussion, and whether, you know, there's some kind of racial undertones there. The other part of it is that, you know, the Formula One broadcast, the media, all the assets are highly, highly curated, right? And I didn't really understand this before, you know, reading a little bit more about this, but, you know, the FIA who runs the series, and then you have, Formula One management, and they kind of like control the media assets, right? So they choose everything that we see. You know, every single clip is released from Formula One management. So they get to release the part of the press conference where Max drops an F-bomb. They get to choose which team radios we hear and see on TV. Like, all of this stuff is highly, highly curated. So they have complete control over what our perception is as the public. And, you know, when you have both of those elements combined, and I'm not suggesting there's kind of collusion there, but when you have both of those elements combined, you know, we can't be holding the drivers responsible for being emotional athletes, which is what we want to see. We don't want to see, you know what, we don't want this to turn into hockey, because hockey has the worst interviews. They have 0% personality. They've all been media trained. It's all about one skid at a time. We're just there doing our best, carrying the puck, finding our boys, just putting it one day at a time.
We went out there, we left it all on the ice.
No one wants that shit. It's fucking brutal. It's terrible. And in no other sport do we have essentially live mics on every single player on the field. And the odd time when you have you're watching an NFL game or you get some hockey player that's mic'd up, there are F-bombs everywhere because you're in the moment, you're heated, you're emotional, you're passionate. And that's what you want from these guys. And to ask them to be doing what they're doing, racing what they're racing in the conditions that they are, and to be checking their language, mid-race, as they're having these strategic or passionate conversations with their engineers, I just don't think is reasonable. And I think it takes away from some of the personality of the sport and what we love about it so much. So anyways, I love that he got community service, whatever that means. And I love how petty he was in the press conference following that. I thought that was hilarious. I thought
it's amazing. It's great. He's like, okay, fine then. Follow me outside, guys. And then I'll have the real conference with you out there when I can say whatever I want.
Yeah.
He's just letting them know that, okay, sure, you control what I say inside those doors, but once I'm out of them, it's up to me again. So sure, bud, I'll go do your community service. I'll go shake babies and kiss hands. You know what I mean?
Yeah. One word answers. And, what are they going to do about that now? Right. At what point they come up with different standards for what a reasonable answer is and what a reasonable answer isn't? I don't know. I think it speaks to a bigger divide between the drivers and the FIA, specifically the director, perhaps at this point. It'll be interesting to see what happens on that front.
Yeah, and to both of your points, I really hope that doesn't change too much. I really hope the drivers get to express their emotions and what they're feeling. Especially what you, Walker, said during the race. You can't really control. You're all heated, you're all concentrated. If you crash or something happens, you're gonna blur out an F-bomb or something. And if FIA would actually step in and actually start doing reinforcements on that, and what you said, it would take away from the sport. It would take away it just would feel too scripted and too fake.
I think too that there was, what they had to do was they had to just draw a line in the sand and just say listen, swearing during press conferences is not going to happen. That's just where we draw the line. We understand that when the guys are in the car, they're going to do their thing. Obviously the radio messages, they're all beeped out. They're starred out when they type in what the drivers are saying on the screen, and then they beep it out. So they understand, and they're still promoting those. Obviously they could take phrases where the guys aren't swearing, but they're promoting the ones that they're swearing. So the FIA, everybody who's in charge, the media, everyone, they're all conscious that these guys are swearing. They've just drawn the line in the sand that at the press conference is not where it's going to happen anymore, or we're not going to be okay with it anymore. And I'm actually curious. I think we should do a follow-up on what that community service is. I hope that doesn't get dropped, and it's one of those things that no one forgets about. I hope Max has to fly back to Singapore during the off season or during the next 4 weeks and spend 300 hours or whatever stupid stuff it is and pick up gum underneath train rails or whatever. I don't know, whatever it is.
There can't even be gum. It's illegal to have gum in Singapore.
That's why I made that point.
Okay, there you go.
That's why I made that point. Yeah.
Well, there you have it. Fucking Singapore in a nutshell.
Singapore in a bubblegum wrapper.
In a bubblegum wrapper. Boys, anything else you want to talk about before we sign off for today?
Of course I do, Walker. While I have this moment, let's do a quick plug. We have to plug the Discord. If you guys haven't yet, to the 85 people that listen to us on a consistent basis, please jump in the Discord. I think we have about sub 20 people there. I know this is starting to sound desperate, but just join the Discord. We talk all F1 all the time. We got upcoming races. We got a media channel, social media. We got all kinds of stuff. It's fun. And if you're into F1, you'll dig it. Otherwise, you can find us anywhere you can find socials. We're on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. I think that's pretty much it because I tap out at posting on every other channel. But you can follow us. All the links will be in the show notes at F1 True North. Find us. Join the talk. We appreciate you. If you haven't, subscribe, share, do whatever you got to do. Tell your grandma about this. She's going to love us.
Dude, you've been pretty desperate the last few episodes. I feel like these call-outs have you gotta come from a position of strength.
I think if I do it at the beginning of the episode and then have it as like a clip that I can just play over and over, like, hey, join us every Wednesday for our new episode of Formula One True North. Don't forget to join the Discord, Then I can just have that clip, and that's just a permanent clip I can play before the episode, like our own advertising.
Yeah, fair enough. No, we can do that. We can add that in there.
Yeah.
Just don't sound so desperate when you do it next time.
We are desperate. Wow, we're looking for sponsors. We're looking for collaboration. We want the algo to tickle it.
So for every new follower, Drew will do. Would you do that again? Yeah. He's going to do that to you. You can figure out the rest.
Okay.
Use your imagination.
Use your imagination.
Use your imagination and head over to, if you're listening to this, you need to go over to YouTube and see exactly what I'm talking about, because it's both terrifying and enticing all at the same time. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little hard right now.
Yeah. Excited,
right, boys,
and terrified.
Thank you everyone for listening. Drew mentioned Discord, socials, all that fun stuff. This has been another episode of Formula One True North, the Canadian Formula One podcast. We will chat with you next week.